Hey there, Twisters. Nick here, and continuing with our 2021 Stanley Cup playoff previews, today I'm going to be breaking down the New York Islanders going up against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, what do you guys think about the series? I want to know your thoughts down in the comments below, and here's how I'm going to be doing this one. We're going to be looking at the season series between these two teams. We're going to look at their various records throughout the season. We'll look at some team stats, some of my key storylines, things to follow, sort of X factors, and then I'll make my prediction, and we'll see how that compares with you. So let's jump into this. So on the season, the Pittsburgh Penguins technically won 6 of their 8 games against the Islanders. They were 6-2-0, and they outscored the Islanders 26-19 in those 8 contests. However, the New York Islanders, if you want to spin it this way, they were 2-4-2, so they actually got points in half of those games. Now let's look at the records for these two teams on the season. So Pittsburgh coming in as the Eastern Division champions, or the East Division champions, 37-16-3. In their last 10, they were 8-2-0. Only the Florida Panthers had as good of a record as they did down the stretch there. And at home, they were an astonishing 22-4-2. And away, they were 15-12-1, a little bit more pedestrian, but still respectable, absolutely. The New York Islanders on the season, 32-17-7. That was 4th place, of course. Last 10, though, they struggled. They were just 3-4-3. At home, they were nearly as unbeatable as Pittsburgh. They were 21-4-3. And away, they struggled a little bit at 11-13-4. Now let's look at our team stats here. And this is great because that's a big theme when it comes to these two teams. They're very different from each other. So goals for Pittsburgh tops in the NHL at 3.45. The Islanders, kind of where you would expect them, at 20th, 2.71. However, the script definitely flips when you look at defensively. So goals against Pittsburgh tied for 13th, still not bad, 2.77. And the Islanders were second in the NHL. Only Vegas had them beat by, I think, 0.01 percentage points here. So 2.23. That's lights out. Power play percentages. Pittsburgh, 23.7%. That was 4th in the league. And the Islanders were at 18.8%, which was 21st. And then I also want to couple in their ability to draw penalties, because when you do that, you get more opportunities on the power play. So I think these stats definitely go hand in hand here. Pittsburgh, they were just 25th in the NHL at 3.09 penalties drawn per game, and the Islanders were a little bit worse, 29th in the league at 2.86. Now we'll look at penalty kills and penalties committed, of course. So penalty kill percentage, the Penguins struggled. They were 26th in the NHL at 77.4%. The Islanders, though, were pretty solid. They were tied for 6th at 83.7%. And then when it comes to discipline, these two teams were actually both very good. So Pittsburgh, 7 minutes and 3 seconds of penalty minutes a game. That was 8th best in the NHL. And the New York Islanders, 6 minutes and 36 seconds. That was 3rd in the NHL. And then 2 more stats that I want to highlight here. So shot disparity, that is shots for minus your shots against. So the Pittsburgh Penguins had a plus 0.1 margin. That's very, of course, marginal and almost negligible, I would say. And the Islanders, not that much better, 0.6. So in other words, they averaged 0.6 more shots on goal per game than they surrendered. So not a huge margin there, not compared to a team like Boston, who I previewed. They were at plus 6.5. That's got to be among the biggest in the NHL there. And let's look at faceoffs. So the Penguins were at 49.3%. That was 21st in the NHL. The Islanders were a solid team in the circle. They were 51.4%. That was 9th. Now let's look at my storylines. Man, I had a real fun time with these. So first of all, this is already the 5th battle between Mike Sullivan and Barry Trotz in the postseason. 5th time in the last 6 postseasons. That's pretty crazy, isn't it? So they're 2-2 against each other so far if you look at those 4 series that they've played. Trotz has technically won 13 of those 23 games. And then I wanted to look at Pittsburgh's top performers in those series. So in other words, how do Crosby and Malkin do against Barry Trotz? So Crosby has 18 points in 23 games. Malkin has 15 points in 23 games. So, they produce, but in terms of sparking offensively, Trotz contains him a little bit. However, Jake Gensel, who came into the fold in 2017, he has 17 points in 17 games. And this season, he was healthy for the Penguins, and he was miraculous, so 57 points on the season. So Gensel might be the X factor for Pittsburgh in this series. And of course, I want to talk more about this Pittsburgh Penguins offense, which was ranked first in the NHL. So I mentioned earlier that they had one of the best power plays. So I wanted to see, was this team converting in their last 10? So were they winning their last 10 games in part because of their power play? And to an extent, yes, they were 6 for their last 20 as I computed. That's a very good rate. But you also look at this. They only generated 20 power plays in their last 10 games. So that's even less than what they were drawing through the rest of the season. And they were doing that against non-playoff teams. I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So the power play hasn't been as much of a factor for the Penguins down the stretch. And you couple that with the Islanders as the third best team at staying disciplined. So in other words, that right there will put the onus on the Penguins to generate offense 5-on-5. And I have a little bit of an answer to that a little bit later on. Another big storyline that I want to highlight here is the Islanders' goaltending. And it has been miraculous over Barry Trotz's 3 years on Long Island, I should say. I mean, it doesn't matter who's in net. It could be Thomas Greiss, Robin Lehner, Semyon Varlamov, of course, and now Ilya Sorokin as part of that mix. So Varlamov could be a Vezina finalist. Look at these numbers, guys. 2.04 goals against, 929 save, 7 shutouts. That's insane. 7 shutouts in a regular season is absolutely outstanding. So, man, I hope he's a finalist. He really does. I mean, he's worked his tail off under Trotz. And then Sorokin, even if Varlamov were to falter or get hurt or something like that, Sorokin had an excellent year as well. 2.17 goals against, 918 save, and 3 shutouts. So 3 shutouts for your backup in a shortened season. I mean, they are sitting pretty in between the pipes there. So the Islanders, they have been just getting better in terms of goaltending. And under Barry Trotz, in the 30 postseason games over the past 2 seasons, they have surrendered 70 goals against. So when you average that out per 60 minutes, that is 2.33 goals against. That's just a little bit more than what they were surrendering this season. And also that doesn't factor in overtime as well. So those goals included goals that were surrendered in overtime, I should say. So this team is just terrific when it comes to keeping the puck out of their net. So something's got to give between them and the Penguins' offense, of course. And as I mentioned earlier, the Penguins will have to generate offense 5-on-5, and they were able to do that down the stretch with Jeff Carter. So Jeff Carter has been a great acquisition for them. In his 14 games as a Penguin, he has scored 9 goals. Only one of them has been on the power play, so 8 even strength goals in 14 games. He's a +9. His shot percentage, 24.3%. That is absurd. Also had 10 blocked shots, 9 takeaways, nearly won 50% of his draws, which is good for a team that struggles in the circle. So overall, he's been a great fit for them. So it's all about him helping the team carry their momentum, I would say. And he has 39 goals in 120 career playoff games. So this guy was a great addition to the club, absolutely. And then the last thing I want to talk about before I make my prediction is home ice advantage. So as I mentioned earlier, 22-4-2 for the Penguins, 21-4-3 for the Isle. And this series will be starting in Pittsburgh at PPG Paints Arena. Their capacity will be maxed out at 50%. So you're looking at, 8,500, 9,000 people in the building? That could actually create a fairly good playoff atmosphere, especially when you've got that many Yinzers in the crowd. As for the Islanders, though, they would be able to support, from what I've seen, up to 3,500 fans. I know New York has been overall a little more restrictive. That was something that I just saw in the New York Post, but hasn't been confirmed, or at least I didn't see anything about it. You can let me know in the comments if that has increased for sure. So really, when you look at this series, the Islanders are going to have to play airtight defense and just brick wall, lights out goaltending. They have to go like Super Saiyan level in game 1 or in game 2 in order to not fall 2-0 and going back to the island. So that's the big critical factor I would think in this series. So now let's talk about my prediction here. So I'm going to mention a couple things here first. First of all, these two teams, they haven't faced each other in over 6 weeks. March 29th was the last time they did battle. And Pittsburgh, I've been singing their praises quite a bit in terms of 5-on-5 offense, and of course the results that were generated from that, Jeff Carter being a huge piece of that. But only 4 of their last 18 games were against playoff teams. So this team's had a cakewalk schedule. And as for the Islanders, only 7 of their last 18 games have been against playoff teams. However, let's look at it this way. The Penguins won the games that they were supposed to win, whereas the Islanders, they were only 5-6-3 since the trade deadline. They really didn't get anything out of Kyle Palmieri or Travis Zajac either. So they're kind of trending downward when it comes to productivity. Even though Varlamov has been fantastic, he's only given up 8 goals in his last 7 starts with a .960 save percentage. But that can only go so far against a team with, depth with Jeff Carter and with Jason Zucker and with, of course, Sidney Crosby. He had a terrific season again. And as I mentioned earlier, Jake Gensel. So with that said, I am leaning toward the Penguins on this one. And I'm going to say that the Penguins get this done in 6 games. But of course, anything can happen in these playoffs. Barry Trotz is a legendary head coach. Absolutely, I'm a huge fan of his ever since he was in Nashville. So he's going to find a way to prove me wrong. He's going to make this interesting, I imagine. But I'm going to stick with Pittsburgh in 6. And as I predicted earlier, Boston, I've got them in 5 over the Capitals. So that would set up a divisional final between the Penguins and the Bruins. But I want to know your thoughts in the comments below. What are your predictions for these 2 matchups? And stick around because we got more coverage of this throughout the playoffs. So make sure like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell. That way you know exactly when I'm putting out content. And then down in the description below, you'll see links to my social media, as well as our Twisted Wrister Hockey merch, because we got hats, shirts, we've got stickers, all kinds of good stuff there for twisters like you. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you tuning in, and I hope to see you around for the rest of the playoffs. You guys have a good one out there. Ciao.